Our channel recently reached 2,000 subs, so to commemorate this milestone and as a thank you to all of you who have supported us so far, I'd like to give you an extra special darling in the Franxx analysis. While episode 20 was focused on setting the stage for the final battle, the purpose of episode 21 was to cement what the characters are fighting for, which is the existence of individuality itself. We're able to see this clearly with Verm. This episode picks right up with Verm not wasting any time to absorb all the adults on Earth. However, right before they do this, they say these words. This is important because later in the episode, we find out from the Klaxazor princess what exactly they are. They're a hive mind that goes around the universe assimilating other species and planets. But they seem to be nice. They're taking humans to an eternally gentle and pleasurable state. Why is that bad? Because when you become part of a hive mind, you lose the ability to be yourself, to have your own thoughts and desires. By being united as one being, you'll be free of pain, insecurity, loneliness, and even the burden of having to make a choice. And as humans, without these imperfections, we'll be given a sense of completeness, but at the same time, we're stripped of what makes us beautiful. This show spends a lot of time asking what makes us human, and Verm put in an equal amount of time in crushing those traits in humanity. For what reason? In order to prepare them for assimilation. By feeding into humanity's innate desire for immortality, they get them to lose their ability to reproduce, which is what biologically sets genders apart. And because of this, humans lose the drive to mingle with each other. The only thing they continue to have throughout their long lives is their frail bodies. At that point, why would they even resist assimilation when all they have to live for is a pleasurable feeling they get inside a machine? Verm played this long game because they had to draw out the Klaxazors in order to remove the threat of Star Entity by securing it for themselves. This is where the plantation children came in. They were allowed to keep their reproductive abilities, but only because it was a required function of piloting a Franxx. Even then, it didn't matter because their puberty was suppressed and their lifespans were shortened because of the stress that comes from piloting a Franxx without having a Klaxazor body. They were merely tools that would be replaced once they broke. If they couldn't even serve that purpose, they were merely disposed of. Verm never cared about cultivating them for assimilation. This is where we get an important contrast between the Nines and Squad 13 in this episode. The Nines represent what Squad 13 would have still been if they had kept to their lives of conformity, giving more emphasis to how far Squad 13 has come. In spite of seeing other Franxx being ripped apart by Papa's units, the Nines continue to fight because it's fitting that Delta delivers this line because there is a small parallel being drawn between her and Kokoro. At the beginning of the battle, Kokoro says, with her memories having been wiped, Kokoro shares the same thinking as Delta, who believes their only purpose is to fight. As Squad 13 continues heading towards Grand Crevice, notice the emphasis on Janista's uneasy face as she stares at the Nines. It immediately cuts to Delta, who was in her immediate line of sight, and shortly after this, Delta's unit is crushed by Papa's units, with her squad failing to save her because they weren't prioritizing each other's safety. Now compare this to the scene when Kokoro offers to stay behind to hold back the invaders. Without any hesitation, Miku rejects the idea, and her immediate reaction is to shield Janista to show Kokoro that protecting her life is the most important thing to her. This illustrates the difference between the squads. Squad 13 has evolved to prioritize each other's lives before their own, while 9 Alpha is left alone and confused, begging for Papa's reply. With this episode, we also get a more complete picture of the biggest nonconformist in the show, Dr. Franxx. After he sacrifices his robotic arm to open up the entrance to Surlesia Path, he says, with this piece of information, we're able to put together what Dr. Franxx was seeking all along. Unbeknownst to Ape, his true plan was to become Code 001's partner, and he was using 02 to get there. Look at the framing of his arm in the previous episode as he extends it toward the Klaxazor princess. Now that we know it contained her DNA, he was hoping she would connect with him and turn him into a being like her. Once he's rejected by the princess and his plan fails, he no longer has any other purpose than just seeing his greatest work, Strelitzia Path, the pinnacle of humanity's strength, in action. But what exactly led Dr. Franxx on this path? From the beginning, Dr. Franxx was never interested in preserving humanity. What he was interested in was bringing it to its next stage of evolution. We can see this with two scenes in particular from episode 19. In the first one, when he's questioned about his thoughts on immortality, he replies with, he was concerned by how the weakness of our bodies and minds is made to be less poetic and instead more pitiful when we're stuck with them forever. The inherent beauty of humans is in our imperfections. The fact that we have an expiration date to our lives makes those imperfections more pronounced and meaningful. When Milsa has to spell out her feelings for him after telling him she wants to have a baby, the very next scene cuts to him crushing a growing fetus. This tells us that he is not interested in creating new life, but rather perfecting it, and he's able to see a glimpse of the beauty he seeks with the Klaxazors.
機械とも有機物とも取れるその未知の構造は 私にとってとても美しいものだった。
Here, his curiosity was piqued, and after this, he devoted all of his time to harnessing the power of the Klaxosaurs in order to make up for humanity's frailty. However, once he met the Klaxosaur princess, that curiosity
興奮していた。紛れもなく私が見てきたものの中で一番綺麗なものだった。
became an obsession. He had found the perfected form he was looking for, similar looking to us, but powerful in both mind and body. In his eyes, this being was majestic, and through whatever means necessary, he became determined to achieve his dream, which was obtaining that perfection for himself. Bringing it back to the concept of individuality, Dr. Franxx always thought for himself. He was a nonconformist through and through, playing by his own rules at every turn. For example, rather than going for immortality, he chose to be implanted with robotic parts, leaving him as the only human with unrepressed sexuality. He went against standard procedure and allowed Squad 13 to experience puberty, and he even went against Ape's plans and brought Strelizia to Plantation 13 to reunite 02 with Hero. At a glance, it might seem like he was trying to enact some form of change, but upon a closer look, it was all self-serving. Even though Dr. Franxx had feelings like any other human, indulging his scientific curiosity always came first. His defiance toward established rules wasn't meant to help anyone else, and that's the problem. Let's compare him to Hero. From a young age, Hero was also very curious. He questioned the society around him. However, his curiosity was a reflection of his people-centered nature. His concern for the children around him pushed him to seek answers to questions the adults didn't want him to ask. He was always the one to bring the other children together, and when he saw someone in pain, he would not just sit idly by. At the start of this series, we're presented with a hero whose memories have already been erased, and he has been made to think his only purpose in life is to fight. After meeting 02 and later on losing her, Hero regains his memories and he has to make the conscious choice to save 02, which is significant because getting your memories back doesn't automatically revert you back to the person you used to be. Many people have knowledge and don't act on it. You have to summon the courage within yourself to take action, and that in itself is development. Hero choosing to be there for others is what allows him and the rest of the squad to grow from being more than just expendable tools. This is the big difference between Dr. Franxx and Hero. Dr. Franxx's scientific curiosity represents his selfishness. He was never interested in connecting with other beings, only in exploiting them for his own ends. On the other hand, Hero's curiosity represents his compassion. He thinks for himself to help the people around him. That's what leads to this scene in this episode.
誰かを好きになったり、そういう時間がたまらなく大切で、守りたいって分かったんだよ。
While Dr. Franxx achieved everything himself, Hero was only able to achieve anything by leaning on others. And now protecting them is what gives his life purpose. This is exactly the reason why the Klaxosaur princess rejected Dr. Franxx. He was never interested in understanding her or what she had lived through. He only looked at her as an ideal that he wanted all for himself. If you think about it, Hero gained everything Dr. Franxx ever wanted. He evolves into a Klaxosapiens, he gets to be with a clone of the Klaxosaur princess, he's able to connect with the actual Klaxosaur princess, and he gets to pilot Strelizia Path, while Dr. Franxx only gets to watch, as everything he loves passes him by because of his neglect. The lesson here is that it's not just about being yourself. The whole purpose of having individuality is to embrace our unique imperfections so that we can lean on each other to make up for those shortcomings. It's about community. This is driven home by Hero's conversation with the Klaxosaur princess. The reason she changes her mind about the humans is because she sees something in Hero and 02 that she had long forgotten: how to live. In order to fight off Verm, the Klaxosaurs had to sacrifice their livelihoods for survival. Ironically, they ended up becoming like the very thing they've been fighting against. They lose the ability to procreate, they stop interacting with each other, and eventually they become mindless immortal weapons that only exist to fight. Sound familiar? Life isn't about the end goal, it's about the moments. And once we lose the ability to enjoy those moments, then what are we living for? If our only purpose is to keep on living, then that's not living. So the reason why Hero has grown so much is because at some point, he was able to answer the most central question to being an individual. What do you desire? And that concludes part 1. Make sure you stay tuned for part 2, which will be coming out this week. That one will cover episode 22. Aside from that, I'd like to give a big thank you to all of you subscribers that brought us to this milestone. I really appreciate your support and hope to continue making videos that you enjoy. I'd also like to give a big thanks to the 2 other nerds on the channel. Without you guys starting this journey with me, I wouldn't be doing this. If you enjoyed this video, let us know by smashing that like button. If you'd like to stay up to date with all of our latest content, then hit that subscribe button, and once you do, ring the little bell next to it so you can be informed of when our next video goes up. And to show all of you my gratitude, I will be accepting 1 video request from a subscriber. All you have to do is drop a comment telling me what you'd like to see me cover, and I'll pick the one with the most likes. Aside from that, if there's anything else you'd like to tell us, let us know in the comments below. Cause after all, what do we know? We're just nerds.